Hello, hello, hello. Sorry, I got a phone call just as we went live. Hello, you guys. Sorry, we're running a little behind, but we're here. We're going to get started. Let's welcome to the screen John, Tisha, and Chris. Let's also welcome to the screen Miss Brittany.
Hi, guys.
She is alive. Look, she is there.
Like half alive, but I'm alive.
So today we're going to talk about it's kind of trending. Paul Rand questioned Rachel Levine in regards to her stance on transgender meds, hormonal meds for children before they reach puberty without the consent of their parents. So he questioned her. I got that video. We're going to play that video. And she didn't answer. He asked her twice on it, and she didn't answer it. So I also have a video of hers from, I'm not sure exactly, I have to look at the date again, but a video of her speaking on it and talking about it's a medicine that she's following. So she'll give the accurate information because it's a little more detailed than I'd like to go into, but that's what we're going to get into today. Before we get into the videos, I'll just have everybody express kind of their feelings on how do you feel about someone giving your child medicine or hormonal medicine before they even reach puberty, if that was your child. We will let Chris and John, we'll let Brittany go first. she's like, so we'll let Brittany go first.
I mean, we can't smoke till we're 18. We can't gamble till we're 18. We can't drink till we're 21. There's things that you can't do. You can't even vote before you're 18. If we're considering adults at 18, I don't understand why, if you're under 18, you have anything to do without your parents' consent. Literally, you go get your tongue pierced, you have to have a note signed by your parents. Because of that. That's a body modification that you think you want as a teenager. And I know because I got my tongue pierced at 16, but you think you want this as a teenager, you get your tongue pierced, but you have to have a handwritten note or your parent has to go with you. So why are we allowing people to alter their gender before even 18? I don't give a shit before puberty, after puberty. I don't care. Why are we letting individuals make decisions before they're 18 when they are not even considered adult legally? And what's next if so? If this isn't happening, are we just going to let kids do whatever they want? What's the point of having a parent at that point? Or a guardian, a legal guardian? But yeah, that sums it up.
Agreed. Aside from the fact that most people who have gotten this procedure done when they were younger, when they get older, they actually regret it. And there's nothing they can do about it unless they go through a whole other procedure, which, I mean, one, who the hell wants to go through that again? But two, like, that's expensive. Kids are not, like, I had this whole thing with my daughter not too long ago, and I told her, we had this conversation with her, and I was like, you don't know anything about yourself right now. Like, you don't know who you are. You think you do. The world is going to tell you that you think that you do, or that no one's allowed to question what you're saying or how you feel or whatever, and that we as your parents don't have a right to question you or to ask you, why you think that. But they're all wrong. You don't know who you are right now. You're not going to know who you are right now for years to come. And I told her, and I know this because I've been where you're at. I've had questions like you've had questions. I've been through that in my life where I questioned it myself. But I realize, I understand now as an adult I understand that I didn't know, so how can you know? Like there's no possible way at your age. You don't know who you are, you don't know what you want to do with yourself. You're still trying to please other people, or you're still taking the thoughts of other people personally, and it affects you in a certain way. Like, you don't know that yet. You have years to go before you understand anything about yourself in that way. So no. So as far as anyone else in this world, I'm like, how do you know? Just no. Yeah. Anything to say?
I mean, I think you and Brittany pretty much summed it up. I'm with you guys, especially the 18. Like, if you're not even 18. I mean, I understand they have rights, but they're limited. And yeah, I feel like as parents, you're giving kids more rights, and we're losing rights. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
So, and here's another perspective. This is what bothers me, because as a teen, I tried to get emancipated. I was 16 and I tried to get emancipated because my father was absent and my mom was, insert nice word for piece of crap, because it straight up, I wanted to be on my own. I was taking care of myself anyways, but I could not legally do that. And you have domestic situations where the system fails them. They don't get taken from their parents. They get put in with a relative who is molesting or equally as crappy, and they still don't have the rights to live on their own and make their own decisions. So how are we going to address gender rights and gender entitlement to be who you are, but yet in a very, very harmful situation? When DHS doesn't even take a child out of the situation, you aren't allowed to, as an older teenager, you aren't allowed to even leave your home without your parents' permission. How does that even make sense? That we are going to address if you want to be a boy or a girl, but we're not going to take the abused teen out of the parent's house because they're still a minor. It doesn't make sense. Like, if we're going to give rights to minors, let's talk about giving rights to minors, because that, to me, and maybe this is biased, but that's the last on the priority list when you look at all the situations with kids in distressful situations.
That's actually a really good point. Actually,
It's just mind blowing. You
right.
you have to have both parents consent, and I know this because I asked my dad if he would vouch for me to get emancipated. I knew who he was, I knew his phone number, and I knew where he lived, but that was the only involvement. And so I got in contact with him to ask him if he would emancipate me, and he told me he wasn't getting involved.
Right.
So yeah. I had my mom, who went to jail twice, and I was taking care of myself anyways, minus the financial stability. He did pay child support, and she did have the roof over my head, but I couldn't go live with a friend. I basically had to run away to go live with my boyfriend, who wasn't even a better situation, but it was better to me at the time. So it's just so frustrating that at 16, 17 years old, I couldn't do that, but we're fighting for 8-year-olds who think they want to be the other gender. It blows my mind.
100%. I agree with that, because I didn't even think about that. And I completely understand that, because I think we've all been in that situation for whatever reason. But we're fighting for this. This is the priority. This is the thing that's at the top of the list, that we're like, no, they need that, and it's their right, and whatever, even though there are millions and millions and millions of kids who are suffering in the situation that they're at currently, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, or situationally. Like, hello, like, this is a situation we've been dealing with for years, and no one is stepping up to do more. But this is the priority.
Even if there's 1,000 of these kids, and maybe that's a low number, I don't know. I haven't looked into stats of 8-year-olds that want to change their genders. But even if there is 1,000 of them, how does that supersede, like you said, the millions of kids who are in crappy homes that the system has failed them? I don't know. Maybe this hits a little too more close to home than I thought.
Right? You know what I mean? Like, wait a minute. You know, you're muted. You're muted.
Sorry.
Rookie.
Sorry. For me, as a parent of 5, this is one of the things that I thought about, like listening to you guys talk about all this stuff. So one of the things I thought about is, out of my 5 children, each and every one of them are very different from the other. So as a parent, I know what my child needs and I know what they don't need because I know them in and out. So when we have children that are exposed to all these things and everything is the norm now, there are zero boundaries. Your kid may be one of your children may be a follower and think like, oh, okay, yeah, like, this is cool or whatever. But I think that nobody knows a child better than their parent, right? That being said, our job as parents are to raise them or establish a foundation for them to be thriving adults. And I think that at that age, I think anything, the same as you guys both, if you have to be 21 to buy cigarettes, you have to be 21 to have a drink, you have to do, there's all these rules. You can't drive to a certain age. You can't do this to a certain age. Your parents can't kick you out of your house because you're still a minor. Like, let's say you had a shitty kid. I mean, you're still a minor, but you're telling me that minors have the right, or they're trying to get it where that minors can go through this experience and get these puberty blockers prior to hitting puberty so that their body doesn't get so their body doesn't reach puberty of whatever gender they don't want. Like, that just doesn't make sense. I think, first of all, in children, like, what are the studies on this that show long-term effects when you're stopping their natural puberty? Like, your body is a machine and it works and it does these things naturally as you grow. So for me, I'm thinking it just doesn't make sense in any way, shape, or form. No one should be telling a parent what to do with or saying that their parent has no right? Like, for me, I don't think that, it's literally mind-blowing, to be honest. You guys pretty much covered everything else that I feel about it. I can't even believe these are the times that we're living in, to be honest. And I was reading, as we were going through this, I was reading on Planned Parenthood, right? Because that's been at a lot of conversations. They get a lot of government-funded money. And I think just like Planned Parenthood, a young girl can go in and get an abortion without the consent of her parents. Like, her parents don't even have to know. And now, do you remember when that first started coming about? They were like, oh, that would never happen. We just want to make sure that girls can come there, their parents can bring them there, and we can give them counseling, etc. And now, boom, they can just go in there. Like, I have a teenage daughter, and thank God we have a great relationship, but I'm like, first of all, that's something between parents and their child. Like, you should discuss all the pros and cons like you do with any medical procedure prior to getting it done. So for me, that just doesn't make sense.
So you mentioned something. So pushing the boundaries of the limits, right? And I think we do this on a lot of stuff. And let me clarify a little bit more. I'm going to take the conservative stance here, right? So if I was like hardcore conservative, say hardcore Bible thumping, church going, and I think those people, there's still people out there like that. If we were to talk about gay and lesbian, okay, and somebody were to ask me, hey, I need you to be more open to this, and you fight it and you fight it and you fight it, and then somebody comes along and says something like, I've told other people, love is love. So if somebody were to tell me, love is love, they maybe they really do love this person, and then you slowly start to go, okay, I'm gonna change the way I look at this. I'm gonna be more open and more accepting, because Jesus loves everybody. So you know what? I'm still gonna love these people. They are people. This is a life that they chose to live. These are real feelings that they have, and I'm gonna accept them for who they are. And then they later on they say, okay, well now you got to be able to accept them being married. And then they're like, oh, cool. Hey, I'll go with it. And then they come around, they say, okay, hey, look, if a guy wants to dress as a girl, we got to accept them for who they are. And you're like, oh, okay, if they want to do it, their choice is their choice. And then it becomes adults. This man wants to be a woman. And you're like, hey, that's his thing. That's his thing. But what they've done, and the point that I'm getting to is they've slowly broken people down to become, to open up and to become more open-minded to it. And then when you think that this isn't going to affect home because this is other people's choices, then it happens to you in your house. And then you're sitting there going, but my kid's 4 or 5, he doesn't know what he wants, or she doesn't know what he wants. But you're told, well, you've accepted all of the rest of this stuff. Now you have to accept this. And if you don't put your foot down, eventually we're just not going to have a say so. And I think that's where we're at right now, is that we, in the process of wanting to accept everybody and who they are, I think we've lost a lot. And in that, we've lost rights. We've lost parents' rights, because once we made it okay for the first person to go through a gender reassignment surgery and go, okay, we're, yeah, cool, we're going to do it because mentally, and through doctor's approval, right? This dude's now he thinks he's a girl, so he's a girl. And people are like, as soon as you say whatever, hey, that's their business. I think that's the point where we lost the fight. Instead of saying, hey, no, so something's not right here. This is not right. Now it's in our households. Now it's in our schools. Now it's something that's being pushed. And I think that's where, even if you're not conservative, to me, there's right, wrong, there's truth, there's fact, there's a lot of bullshit out there. If we can't come to the middle ground and say, hey, biology is biology. Boys are boys, girls are girls. Now, if you want to pretend to be a girl, when you become adult and in your adult life, by all means, go do you. But this is what it is. And there's a lot of reasons behind it, whether it be medical, because dudes can't have babies. I don't care what they say. But you got to know these things. If we don't I don't think if we don't start taking a really hard stance right now and say, hey, this ain't going to go no more, we're going to lose it. And the other thing is that, and it's not just with this. I mean, there's many things. It happened with drugs. Okay, cool. Marijuana, you want to smoke weed? I have nothing against it. And there's a lot of good things that could come out of it. And then it's went to, okay, well, now we're going to open up these, dope houses in San Francisco. I know that's not the name for them, but safe houses where they could come do drugs. And you just make it more, we've allowed it to open up to that. And then it becomes, well, we're going to let them do heroin there. Now we're going to make, let them do shrooms there. What matter of fact, let's just legalize it all. And it's a free for all. Is it doing this? Is that helping us out, or is it doing more harm? And I think that's what we really got to look at.
Also, I wanted to add, maybe not to exactly what he's saying, but going back to boundaries, like setting boundaries for our kids, like it's healthy, like psychologically it's healthy. And for years and years and years and years, this has been a normal thing. Shelly, if you can share my screen, this is just one website. This is just one blog, one thing, whatever. Shelly.
Hey, Smokey.
Charlie.
Jelly.
Oh.
Sorry, I'm looking for one of the videos that I want to play too, but I was trying to time it, like to get to the time.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's funny. Can you share my screen real quick?
Did you just call me Smokey?
What?
Did you call me Smokey?
No, what happened was the video, it glitched and the internet, failed.
So
It
anyways,
sounded like that.
so anyways, this is from mykidstime.com. This is from July 2019. So just 2 years ago, there's blogs about how to set boundaries. And I'm going to skip down. I mean, yes, there are all these little, tips or whatever, but I want to skip down to the bottom where it says, why do I need to set boundaries? Setting clear boundaries with your child matters because they affirm your relationship. Every family member knows where they stand and what is expected of them, which means less stress and more cooperation. Limits are something we set for our child's well-being and for everyone else's, and that includes ourselves. We need boundaries around time, space, and belongings for us to live comfortably together. This was just 2 years ago. And if you go into psychology, if you go to children's psychology and you look, if you go into, you don't have to share it anymore. If you go into, family counseling or anything like that, like they will tell you this is part of their study. It's part of something that they teach all the time for parents is boundaries are healthy and children need them, just like people and adults need boundaries as well. And so why we're all, of course, woke America, all of a sudden we're talking about our babies, giving them, trying to empower them, falsely empower them, and tell them that they can choose to be whatever thing that they want, and they could think about sexual things. Like the Bible straight up is like Jesus straight up told the people. They brought him some kids were coming, and some other people tried to get his attention. They tried to shoo the kids away. He said, whoa, don't shoo the kids away. Bring them to me. Bring your children to me. And he basically said that it would be better for you. Basically said it'd be better for you to kill yourself, because what he said was it would be better for that person who to put a milestone around their neck and jump off a cliff than to take one of these little children away and lead them astray. So this is that.
I just want to add really quick too. I just looked it up because this has been a hot topic in the last decade or so. The assisted death laws, we're having issues even passing those on a state level, let alone a federal level. Which I'm for it. If you're terminally ill and you want to be done. That's your right. You shouldn't have to sit there and suffer. And so we have 9 states now who allow that. But obviously, either other states don't want to. But why are we talking about this at a federal level? Like if California wants to do that to their people, watch it disperse. People will leave. But why on a federal level is this even being brought up? And this lady is a doctor. She's a pediatrician. Shouldn't we be talking to psychologists? Like what John Tisha just brought up. Shouldn't we be talking to psychologists who actually work with the mind, not the body? And honestly, the fact she is a pediatrician and she's talking about gender changes, it's kind of creepy. It's like the fact that she is a pediatrician, she studied pediatrics, and I just looked that she minored in adolescent medicine. So she enjoys caring for children, and now she wants to encourage that they are able to change their genders. It's just,
which is an adult decision. It's not a child's. It's not a child's decision. That is an adult, mature decision that should be made.
Yeah. It's.
I'm gonna play this video real quick just to kind of give you guys out there watching a little bit of context. I don't know if you guys have seen this video before. I'm gonna mute myself and I'm gonna play it. If you guys can hear it, just give me a thumbs up so I know that you can hear it, okay?
How to increase the doses, etc. So this would be sort of the medical standard of care that we follow. But for patients that I saw and the parents of young people that I saw, what I really tried to emphasize is that this is a medical field now. And we're not winging it, we're not making it up as we go along. This is an established medical field. There's an international organization. There's a standard of care. There's a journal. There's research articles. And so this is an established field. Of transgender medicine is an established medical field now.
This is a woman.
And we need to do
No,
a
I
better
said
job
dude.
teaching students
not
as
a-
well as
that's a woman?
practicing healthcare providers about this.
As of 2011, that's a
What if
woman.
you're
I was gonna say
transgender
that doesn't sound like a natural born woman.
So what if you remember puberty? Wasn't that fun? Wasn't that a lot of fun?
Which says a whole
What if
lot.
you're going through the wrong puberty? What if you're a transgender young woman, meaning male to female, and now you're getting, your voice is dropping, you're getting bigger, you're getting hair everywhere, and you're growing those tentacles, and what if you're a transgender young man and now you have breast development in periods? It can be terrifying. There's a lot of mental health issues during that time. So here's two examples. So 17-year-old young man that I saw in clinic, referred by his pediatrician, always identified as male, again, female identified at birth. Parents in school were supportive. He had not seen a therapist, sent him to a therapist, and we treated him. He was given intramuscular testosterone. He is now in his 20s, and he's doing great. 16-year-old young transgender woman, male to female, always felt female. You can get the theme here. Wanted to start hormones, lived with her mother who was supportive, saw a therapist who was supportive. She was given spironolactone and estrogen and transitioned, and now is in graduate school in her early 20s and did absolutely fantastic. So some patients that I would see. So the previous treatment before these new guidelines came about were, that's when you're 18 and have a nice life. Basically, there was no medical treatment for individuals that were under 18. So there are new guidelines, and so these are the new guidelines that are very well accepted by healthcare professionals. They are international guidelines, and most children's hospitals will be doing this. I did this. I would treat patients at Penn State Hershey Medical Center when I was there. I think they're trying to find someone to
Ricardo.
do that. Probably the biggest program near here is at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia in the Penn system, and they have an excellent clinic for transgender youth. So for prepubertal children, there is no medical treatment. Well, that kind of makes sense. I mean, they're prepubertal, so they don't really have clinical levels of sex hormones. So what medical treatment would you want to do? So the idea would be to see a counselor or a therapist who is supportive, who has knowledge about these issues, to come. You could some see me medically, and then depending on their age, come see me in a year or two. But there's nothing medical to do. Work with the parents. For the parents of transgender youth, it can be very, very challenging. That the transgender individual is being very affirmed by getting treatment and being accepted as the gender to which they identify. To the parents, whether the young person is 6 or 15 or 52, it's a loss. It feels like a death. You are losing the son or daughter that you thought you. Now you're gaining a son or daughter, but you still actually almost grieve the child that you thought you had. And I know for the transgender individuals, it doesn't make any sense because I'm still here, but that's the way it feels to parents. And so we have to do a lot of counseling with youth about letting their parents go through this process because there's no way to make that faster. And sometimes, the youth is ready to go, and you have to help the parents come along. And otherwise, things don't go well. So the parents, for youth, the parents' feelings are critically important to have things go smoothly. But for prepubertal children, they might present in different ways. They might present at school in the gender they were identified were at birth, or they might present as the other gender. They might be more gender fluid. But you kind of let the child kind of with counseling and with the family kind of determine how they present. But there's no medical treatment. So at the start of puberty, so if they fulfill all the criteria with pubertal stage 2, which means you're just starting puberty, and everyone's on board. So the parents are on board, the therapist is on board, the physician's on board, and obviously the patient's on board. Then you can do this protocol. So the protocol was developed in the Netherlands, has 2 phases. The first phase at the young adolescent age is to give what are called a pubertal blocker, to give a medicine to block the progression of puberty so you don't go through the wrong puberty. and then to continue some counseling, and then somewhere between 14 and 16 years of age to start slowly cross-gender hormones. Again, they have to go through puberty. Puberty doesn't happen, it's going to take years. So you start in low doses, you gradually increase, so that they never go through the wrong puberty. That way, for a transgender woman, male to female, their voice doesn't drop, they don't have hair, they don't have to have electrolysis. For a transgender man, they don't have breast development that will need surgery, they don't have periods, etc. So you block puberty, and then you can, at the appropriate time, send them through the puberty consistent with their gender identity. Does that make sense? Okay. So it's two phases. And then there are follow-up protocols. Most surgical treatment would be done at around 18. There are some procedures that might be done earlier than 18. And there are some exceptions. Now, this is a great protocol if you're seeing patients in the cornfields of Hershey, you know, or at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, where the parents.
All right, I'm going to stop it there. That was just to kind of give you guys a little bit of context of what we're talking about, and it's going to lead to the next video where Rand Paul actually questions Dr. Levine. So for those of you who do not know who Dr. Levine is, Dr. Levine was just confirmed as the assistant HHS secretary by President Biden. So if you don't know who she is, that's who she is. I'm gonna stop sharing this. I just wanted to give you guys, if you guys want that article, I can give it to you guys. I mean, that video, I can post it so that you guys can watch the whole thing if you want. I don't want to watch another second of her talk.
I'm really irritated. Like, I posted it in the comments, but and this isn't like I've met some men and women where I'm like, you question a little bit because maybe they have a softer voice, or a little high-pitched voice, or a deeper voice, or, you know, maybe they look like their dad a little more, you know what I'm saying? Like, or their mother, like, because it happens. I don't mean that, but when you look and listen to that person, it is very clear that that person was not born a woman. And that makes, like I want to cry. Like, I'm so livid inside me. Like, that makes so much sense as to why that person is pushing this so hard, and why we as a nation, and we as a nation of parents, need to stand up and be loud about this, because that's wrong. Just because that person had that experience doesn't mean that every person and every child has that experience. And it doesn't mean that just because they feel some type of way, they're like, oh, well, if I felt like this, and they definitely feel like, no. Like, I'm so irritated. Like, I have some things I want to share too, because we talk about procedures like gender change, regret. Like, there's regret, and there's suicide that comes from that because of that regret. Like, I want to share, like, I'm pulling some things up and statistics and all that stuff. Like, I'm going to pull that up too. It might be a little bit older, but still, it still stands. So I want to share that too, and like, make it a thing. Like, we have to stand up for our kids. Like, the Bible straight up says you take care of orphans and you take care of widows. Like, that's like one thing that people, you know, stand up to. But also, you make sure that your children are safe and they're led correctly and they're brought up properly. You don't have to believe in the Bible. You don't have to believe in Jesus to know that that's true. That you protect your children and you make sure that they grow up as children, because being a kid, like, that is like a small percentage of our lives. We're only children for a small percentage. The rest of the time, we're adults going through the shit. That time should stay as innocent as possible, but also in a time to be taught and to learn and to grow and to mold and to help them along, not push these things on them and convince them when they're when they're at the age where they're so influenced by so many things, they're little sponges. Like that is so like, that's like taking advantage of them. Like I'm so irritated right now.
Did you guys hear when she said the age 6?
Yeah, she said regardless of the age. Missed where she said that without parent consent, though, because not that I agree with any of this, but if two, I'm gonna say this as bold as possible. If two dumbass parents are gonna let their kids do it, then it is what it is. But I ain't never letting my kids do it before they're sure. But in my mind, like the biggest red flag in all of this to me isn't necessarily like the act of what's happening. It's more the parent consent thing. If they're letting these kids do this underage, that is the most alarming. Obviously, I don't think you should do a 6-year-old because a 6-year-old can't tell you yes or no. But in the case of like the 16 and 17 and 15-year-olds, like if that's something that kid thinks they want and the parents are like, yeah, whatever you think. If that kid grows up to regret it later, they're just going to hate their parents for letting them do it. Or maybe they won't. I don't know. But, and then I know, John Tisha, you said something about the mental health aspect later of them regretting it. I kind of feel like it's a catch-22, honestly, because they're trying to do this to prevent the mental health. And then if they end up letting them do it to prevent the mental health episode and then they regret it later and there's a mental health episode, it's just a freaking catch-22.
Well, and the thing I want to show you guys is that the suicide rate increases for those who regret it after. It doesn't stay the same, it increases.
Yeah. We're gonna play this video. He kind of he touches on it and he gives a case basically on it. So I'm gonna play this really quick and then we'll do yours afterwards, John Tisha. Let me mute.
Genital mutilation has been nearly universally condemned. Genital mutilation has been condemned by the WHO, the United Nations Children's Fund, the United Nations Population Fund. According to the WHO, genital mutilation is recognized internationally as a violation of human rights. Genital mutilation is considered particularly egregious because, as the WHO notes, it is nearly always carried out on minors and is a violation of the rights of children. Most genital mutilation is not typically performed by force, but as WHO notes, that by social convention, social norm, the social pressure to conform, to do what others do and have been doing, as well as the need to be accepted socially and the fear of being rejected by the community. American culture is now normalizing the idea that minors can be given hormones to prevent their biological development of their secondary sexual characteristics. Dr. Levine, you have supported both allowing minors to be given hormone blockers to prevent them from going through puberty, as well as surgical destruction of a minor's genitalia. Like surgical mutilation, hormonal interruption of puberty can permanently alter and prevent secondary sexual characteristics. The American College of Pediatricians reports that 80 to 95% of prepubertal children with gender dysphoria will experience resolution by late adolescence if not exposed to medical intervention and social affirmation. Dr. Levine, do you believe that minors are capable of making such a life-changing decision as changing one's sex?
Well, Senator, thank you for your interest in this question. Transgender medicine is a very complex and nuanced field with robust research and standards of care that have been developed. And if I am fortunate enough to be confirmed as the Assistant Secretary of Health, I would look forward to working with you and your office and coming to your office and discussing the particulars of the standards of care for transgender medicine.
The specific question was about minors. Let's be a little more specific since you evaded the question. Do you support the government intervening to override the parent's consent to give a child puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and/or amputation surgery of breasts and genitalia? You have said that you're willing to accelerate the protocols for street kids. I'm alarmed that poor kids with no parents who are homeless and distraught, you would just go through this and allow that to happen to a minor. I would hope that you would have compassion for Kira Bell, who's a 23-year-old girl who was confused with her identity. At 14, she read on the internet about something about transsexual. She thought, well, maybe that's what I am. She ended up getting these puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones. She had her breasts amputated. But here's what ultimately she says now. And this is a very insightful decision from someone who made a mistake, but was led to believe this was a good thing by the medical community. I made a brash decision as a teenager, as a lot of teenagers do, trying to find confidence and happiness, except the rest of my life would be negatively affected, she said, adding that the medicalized gender transitioning was a very temporary, superficial fix for a very complex identity issue. What I'm alarmed at is that you're not willing to say absolutely minors shouldn't be making decisions to amputate their breast or to amputate their genitalia. For most of our history, we believe that minors don't have full rights and that parents need to be involved. So I'm alarmed that you won't say with certainty that minors should not have the ability to make the decision to take hormones that will affect them for the rest of their life. Will you make a more firm decision on whether or not minors should be involved in these decisions?
Senator, transgender medicine is a very complex and nuanced field. And if confirmed to the position of Assistant Secretary of Health, I would certainly be pleased to come to your office and talk with you and your staff.
She's just repeating
about
herself?
the standards of care and the complexity of this field.
That's a
Let it go
robot,
into the
y'all.
record that the witness refused to answer the question. The question is a very specific one. Should minors be making these momentous decisions? For most of the history of medicine, we wouldn't let you have a cut sewn up in the ER, but you're willing to let a minor take things that prevent their puberty, and you think they get that back? You give a woman testosterone enough that she grows a beard, you think she's going to go back looking like a woman when you stop the testosterone? You have permanently changed them. Infertility is another problem. None of these drugs have been approved for this. They're all being used off label. I find it ironic that the left that went nuts over hydroxychloroquine being used possibly for COVID are not alarmed that these hormones are being used off label. There's no long-term studies. We don't know what happens to them. We do know that there are dozens and dozens of people who've been through this who regret that this happened and a permanent change happened to them. And, you know, if you've ever been around children, 14-year-olds can't make this decision. In the gender dysphoria clinic in England, 10% of the kids are between the ages of 3 and 10. We should be outraged that someone's talking to a 3-year-old about changing their sex. I can't vote for you if you can't.
Thank you so much, Senator Paul. Senator Levine, thank you for answering the question.
Dude, that's a robot. That was creepy. Word for word. Was that a prompt like she had? Like I that was not natural. Team circle back, someone said. Team circle back.
Part of the team. She's part of the team. So after watching those, I thought he hits her with direct points. Like he hits her. It's a specific question. Asked her twice. She said the exact same thing.
Well, and I like that he mentioned the medicine because literally before the video even played, I was looking at, in my mind, we're so, like with the whole ivermectin, we were so trying to get Dr. Corey out there with ivermectin with COVID, but they're like, oh, the WHO says this, the WHO says this, and now they're clearly saying the WHO says, do not touch your babies. And they're like, WHO, what do they know? You know what I mean? Like, and there's an article on the BBC, which is usually left, that I've seen. People say it's neutral, but to each their own. And it even says that there's no studies, and even the UK is saying, well, if there's studies, are these ethical? Because you had to study on minors. Like,
I'm actually looking at a 2021 article here of an actual doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist talking about that actually. So when you're ready, share my screen. So this is just one. I think this person's from the UK also, but it says up to 20% have regrets about their sex change. Sex change procedures are not effective, says researchers. 10 to 15 years after surgical reassignment, the suicide rate is 20 times that of comparable peers. Here we reach out to those considering detransitioning. So this is a person who went through it and regretted it. Hormones, I'm assuming that this video is saying this, so I'm just going to read it. Hormones, surgery, regret. I was a transgender woman for 8 years. Weight hair in April of 83, the year I was born. In 83, not 2021, but in 83, I had a gender reassignment surgery. At first, I was giddy for the fresh start, but hormones and sex change genital surgery couldn't solve the underlying issues driving my gender dysphoria. I detransitioned more than 25 years ago. I learned the truth. Hormones and surgery may alter appearances, but nothing changes the immutable fact of your sex. I met a wonderful woman who didn't care about the changes to my body, and we've been married for over 20 years. Now we help others whose lives have been derailed by sex change. And then there's an article on the bottom of that page, but this, transition treatments harms kids, veteran psychiatrist at UK Gender Clinic says. And this is something that they went through out there, what Brittany was saying. Children have been very seriously damaged in receiving treatment at the United Kingdom's premier gender identity facility, a former psychiatrist there says in a bombshell interview. Down here it says, I was a representative of the clinical and academic staff. The concerns that were brought to me were very, very serious. The main concerns were issues that had to do with lack of consent. Many of the people who spoke to me did not think their children were able to consent to the treatment. Then there were concerns of children being inappropriately pushed through to transition where they had a lot of complex problems that really needed thinking about. The whole attitude of what's called affirmation instead of neutrality and inquiry caused considerable damage to the capacity of the service and clinicians to take on the full complexities of the cases they were dealing with. As a result, children have been very seriously damaged. Down here it says, Bell replies, they're less at risk now because the puberty blockers have been stopped, but puberty blockers have been stopped because there's no evidence base for them at all. By putting them on that pathway, it rather becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So their Supreme Court ended up ruling against it because it messes with the children and because there's no found basis to even push any of this onto children at that age. And this was to be for kids under 16, any kids under 16. And there's a whole lot more, but those were like the main points that I wanted to share to piggyback off of Brittany or whatever, going against Levine and whatever that person is talking about and backing the other, what's his name? What was the other guy's name?
What's that?
Rand Paul?
Rand Paul,
Yes,
yeah.
that guy. And so it does more harm than it does good. And I see you making these here. I think it's important to go talk. Because I'm so like pumped up right, like I'm so like passionate right now. Like my mind is boggled. I understand, like I always say, like, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. And no, I'm not surprised. But at the same time, like, my mind is blowing up right now. And my heart is, like, cringing. And, like, I want to fight somebody. And I want to cry at the same time. And I want to yell at the top of my lungs and find all the reasons why this shit is bullshit.
All right. So, Brittany, I think you said something earlier, like...
Charlie, you can take it down.
You were talking about the parents or... They're the ones that might be jacked up or something like that.
Yeah, I said that if their parents are gonna let them, then that it's their drama between them later. Like,
yeah, because I know I can't remember somebody in the post, and I made a note about it. It's like when you're the legal guardian, right? I think it's crazy that you, as a parent, some people, like, I agree with you, Brittany. Like, if that's what they want to do, and you want to fuck your kid up, by all means, you go do you. And that goes back to this things where that's what we're doing right now. Like, I shouldn't be saying that because it's kind of, I feel hypocritical with it. Like, I don't think they should do them, but they're going to go do them anyways. Let's put it like that. I think they're wrong for it because it goes back to pushing the boundaries. So I honestly think those parents are wrong, if that's that. But when you're the legal guardian, right, and you have all these rights, or you not say rights, but you can get in trouble for all this stuff. Like, your kids don't go to school. You get the truancy officer at your house. You don't take them to get a shot to get into school or whatever it may be. Like you could get in trouble for all this. If your kids go out and break some shit, somebody's car or whatever, you could be held liable. You're the one that's going to have to pay for it. So you have this liability, like you're liable for what your kids do because they're not of age. So somebody can't sue the kid, but they'll go after the parents. But then, so you have to pay for your kids, right? Or you get them out of trouble, whatever it may be. But then you get to something like this and you don't have anything.
I was about to say, like, if they got caught with something, or if they were in the house and they had something, that the owners of the house, which are usually the parents or whatever, they're the ones that get in trouble.
Yeah.
But here we have, I agree.
It just goes back to the hypocrisy. Like, okay, you can, and to me, it's a democratic thing. And this is why somebody like me walked away from that party. I don't know if I was ever really in it, but it's a family thing. But to say, hey, you can have these rights over here and you're legally responsible for this over here, but over here, you don't get no right. You don't get no say. And you're also responsible for covering the bill or however it may turn out. He, whatever. Well, I'm just going to call him Dr. Levine. I think
I've been saying that person.
When Dr. Levine said they're going through the wrong puberty, that's something that stuck out because I listened to him when they were doing, when they were bringing him in. I listened to him speak, and when he said they're going through the wrong puberty, that stood out with me. I was like, hold on, how did somebody go through the wrong puberty? And the reason why they say that, and we know that, is because they're saying boys can be girls and girls can be boys. No, this is where we got to take that firm stance of no, they're not going through the wrong puberty. They are a boy. That is what's natural, and it's supposed to happen. They're going through the right puberty, but mentally, they want to be something else. That's where instead of seeking help for your kid to say, hey, let's figure this out. Maybe you're just gay or lesbian. Or maybe you do got gender dysphoria or a mental condition. But what's happening with your body is right. That's just, like women, that get pregnant, like that's natural. And there's things that you go through and nobody saying, oh, well, pregnancy is unnatural. Well, they'll probably say it now because dudes are going to start getting pregnant. But nobody's going to say that that's it's unnatural. No. I know, I'm just saying. It's just a joke. But nobody's going to say
I wouldn't be surprised.
It's
They did make that movie Junior.
Yeah,
right.
I know. We've seen it a long time ago, and I was like, dang.
Great. But my point is that we have blurred the lines between truth and facts, and we don't like. That's a lot of the reasons why Dr. Levine doesn't answer certain questions, or they always want to circle back to stuff because they know that it's all bullshit. But there's a bigger agenda behind it, and they much rather turn a blind eye to it.
Amy made a good point. She said that I think she meant to say parents can't spank our kids, but we can't. Yeah. We can't spank our kids, but we can just chop their wee-wees off. It's fine.
You know what I mean? What the heck?
See, and this goes back to like when people talk about the government. This is why I think government should have minimal to do with their lives. I think that they should have minimal to do with parental rights when people get divorced. I think they should have minimal to do with divorce. Outside of, hey, there are certain things I think should happen, but we're talking minimal. I'm very against like a lot of social services because
you reminded me of something.
I just don't see them doing good because a lot of times there's no end result. And I think the more we let them in our lives, because, and this goes, and I'm going to tie this in with data, right? Because they keep talking about data. People, it works out. So often when they pull this data or they do these surveys, they do them in echo chambers. Like they survey people who they know are going to agree with this. They survey, Democrats or liberals, and they go, well, 90% of Americans that we surveyed, but they surveyed from one group, because how many times do we get on websites that talk about this stuff, or do we click on those links? They don't actually come to the people like during voting season. Like if they want to put something on the bill, they don't actually come to us and say, hey, do you guys think this should be, is this real? And because more often than not, I think that the reason why they don't give us that opportunity is because they know that the majority of us are going to be like, no, dudes are dudes and girls are girls, and that is what it is. So instead, they go to these surveys, they justify it, and then they just push out these laws, or you get executive orders because they know they can't push it any other way.
Well, and you know what, that what you were talking about government, and that reminded me, because I wanted to say it earlier, and I know you want to play this video, but let me get this out of my head before I forget it. We deal with human trafficking and child trafficking on such a high level in the United States. I mean, around the world, and we know about the deep state and everything, and we know that the ties that are in there, regardless if people want to say that it's conspiracy theory, rabbit hole, whatever. Like, the fact is that is true. And you think that the kids that are messed up now, that are getting caught up running away or getting groomed or being misled or whatever, just imagine the amount of children who are going to be even worse off if this passes, or for those who actually go through it or whatever at this point in their lives. Like, that number is going to increase if no one's paying attention and no one's watching, you know what I'm saying, and protecting them in that way. Like, that is such a huge issue right now as it is. It's only going to get worse. And if everything that they have been saying, that we've been uncovering, with Maxwell and the other guy, what's his name? The one with the island and shit.
Jeffrey
Epstein.
So if you thought that was just like some little whatever, like I'm telling you right now, like it's only going to get worse, and I can only imagine that they have their hands all over this, and they're just waiting. They're just waiting. It's like it's so evil and so gross and so what's the word, demented. It's almost unreal. But sometimes the truth is legit. All of those things. And then people just flick it off and like, oh, it's not going to happen. But really, at the end of the day, like,
something else that
hold on, let her play that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Because I stopped her already. I'm sorry.
My bad.
Is either banned or mandatory. There is no middle category. Good things are mandatory and bad things are banned, according to the left. And they've determined that it is very bad to say that men are men and women are women. And we must train every institutional gun in America on anybody who would note this basic biological fact that men exist and women exist, and human beings, being a mammalian species, are dichotomous in their sex, that there are men and there are women. And the proof of this is that the procreation of the human species relies upon the differences, the biological differences, not the subjective self-assessment differences, the biological differences between men and women. We're going to ignore all of that and pass what is a truly egregious and authoritarian act. The Equality Act is an authoritarian bit of legislation. Okay, so what does the Equality Act actually do? So Ryan Anderson, who has been basically book burned by Amazon, they took down his book When Harry Became Sally, even though it is a well-written, concise, and yes, tolerant book about transgenderism. He says over and over and over that people who suffer from gender dysphoria should be treated with the greatest of care, which is absolutely true. It is a semblance of how idiotic our society has become, that we now say that a man with a mental disorder, namely gender dysphoria, is a woman. Okay, that is not how that works. And yes, it is a mental disorder. According to the DSM-4, gender dysphoria is a mental disorder according to the DSM-5, by the way. It used to be called gender identity disorder. Then they renamed it gender dysphoria because they added a requirement in the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual 5, that it's not just that you identify as a member of the opposite sex, it's that it causes you depression, which is the dumbest standard for diagnosing a mental illness ever, a mental disorder ever. By that standard, if you walk around saying that you are Jesus Christ today, you are not suffering from any sort of mental disorder unless it also causes you distress to say that. Okay, that's a ridiculous standard. It doesn't hold by virtually any other definition of a mental disorder, but that is what the pseudoscientists over at the American Psychological Association have to say about all of this. In any case, what exactly does the Equality Act do? So Ryan Anderson writes about this. The act updates the law Congress passed primarily to combat racism, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and adds sexual orientation and gender identity as protected classes akin to race. So if you have any reservations about gender ideology, as even many progressives do, you'd now be the legal equivalent of Bull Connor, right? To say that men and women exist and that they are separate, and that a man who believes he is a woman is not actually a woman, and that a man who enters a women's locker room with all the male appendages and says he is a woman should not be allowed to do so. This makes you like a 1960s Jim Crow era racist. Okay, now, to suggest that the differences between black people and white people are anywhere akin to the differences between men and women is patently crazy. The differences between black people and white people do not matter. They're essentially skin deep. That is the whole point. The difference between men and women is a lot more than skin deep. It affects nearly every area of intersexual relationships. It affects how men and women develop physically. It affects how men and women develop mentally. There are significant differences in mental development between men and women. Women have advantages in some areas, men have advantages in some areas, but there are major differences. This is all well-established science. There is not a single thing I'm saying right now that is conjecture. What is conjecture is the suggestion that sex is completely malleable. What the left has done here is they play a game. Here's how the game works. They accept, supposedly, that sex is non-malleable. Then they say gender is different from sex. So what is gender? Gender is a collection of stereotypes about femininity and masculinity. Okay, but now that they're stereotypes, you're saying that they're arbitrary, right? Because they're stereotypes. They're not connected to any sort of underlying biological reality. And yet you say that gender is so important and so real that those stereotypes actually make you a man or a woman. So now sex doesn't matter, right? So sex, which is the only thing that we can objectively tell, that doesn't matter because gender identity, which a second ago was a set of stereotypes that were supposedly foisted upon you by an intolerant society, those are the only things that matter. So if a man cross-dresses and dresses up as a woman, and this makes him transgender interested, perhaps, right? Maybe he's actually a girl, but it depends on his self-definition. If he's a man who just likes wearing a dress, then for sure he's just a man. But if he's a man who likes wearing a dress and also thinks he's a woman, then he is a transgender person. If none of this makes any scientific sense to you, that's because it has nothing to do with science. It is, in fact, an ideology. It is not, in fact, scientifically rooted. It is based entirely on the fallacy that that biological sex and gender characteristics are completely different, and yet gender characteristics matter more than biological sex. And then what you will see is the final move, which is, well, actually, we're going to go back to that whole thing about sexual dichotomy. It doesn't exist. So you'll see this from the left a lot. Well, you see, there are people who have XX chromosomes or XY chromosomes and who manifest as a member of the other sex because of a developmental disorder. Yes, it's called a developmental disorder. If I say that human beings walk upright, that is a true statement. Now, are there certain human beings who are born with a disability and cannot walk upright? Yes. Does that mean that as a class of human beings do not walk upright? No. It means that some people have disorders. Okay, that does not mean that you redefine that exact term. Okay, what people on the left like to do is take edge cases, right? They like to take genetic anomalies and then treat those as though this creates entire new classes of human beings. This is incorrect. It is not right. It's all ridiculous, but this has become the new normal. So now they're trying to enshrine this into law. And this has some pretty dire ramifications for your freedoms. Everything from freedom of association to freedom of religion to freedom of the press to freedom of speech. All of it is going to be ground down under the boot heel of an authoritarian left that decides that basic truth should be verboten. Okay? It is a basic truth that men and women exist and exist on the basis of biological characteristics that are objectively verifiable. That is simple reality. If you die today, there will be people 100 years from now who will be able to look at your DNA and they will be able to tell whether you're a man or a woman, and your subjective self-identification will matter not one whit, because all you will be at that point is bones. You will be able to know whether you are in fact a man or a woman simply by looking at your bone structure. We do this right now in archaeology. We can tell what sex your baby is before they are born. According to the left, by the way, you can't tell somebody's actual gender until they die, and even then you can't use their biology, because your gender could switch any minute. There are people who are 45 years old who have been a man all their life and have sired 7 children. And if they decide they're a woman, not only are they a woman, they were always a woman. Because not only does transgender ideology violate the boundaries of biology, it violates the boundaries of physics. It's incredible. It's a time machine. You have to erase every vestige of the idea that this person was ever a man. Right? It's not just that Bruce Jenner changed his name and became Caitlyn Jenner and had some surgeries. That is not what happened. Bruce Jenner was always Caitlyn Jenner. Bruce Jenner was always a woman, you see, while winning medals at the Olympics, which makes him the most accomplished female athlete ever, by the way. Right? So it turns out that biological men are even the best female athletes. It's incredible. But now this is going to be written into law, and you're going to be cudgeled with it, and your children will be cudgeled with it. Let's not pretend that this is anything but what it is. It's an authoritarian move by the left to cudgel everyone into line. It's an exercise of absolute raw power. That is the attempt right here. As Ryan Anderson writes, rather than finding common sense, narrowly tailored ways to shield LGBT identifying Americans.
Well, I wanted to say that because I thought he had some really good points.
I like how he brought up the science fact because as we noticed with COVID, they were literally beating down our throats. Follow the science, follow the science. But it's subjective. Like, obviously the right has flaws too. There's flaws in the right for sure. But when they clearly are saying follow the science, but then they're cotton picking which science they want to follow,
Ooh,
it's not, huh?
Oh, I'm on it. You said cotton picking. I said, "Ooh, you said a bad word." So I'm just gonna get upset.
It's what it is. It's what it is. There, I mean,
What it
everybody
is.
that's talking about this is the same color, so it's not a bad word. It is what it is.
To
But
me, go ahead, Brittany. I'm sorry.
no, I'm just saying that they literally just it's the hypocrite party. I told you guys, it's the hypocrites.
Well, for me, I'm like, somebody put in the comments that his voice is creepy. I know he has like a kind of strange way of talking, but I think that he is always bringing facts. And what I like about him is even though he leans conservative, he will give it to both sides. Like he will hit them both. He's like Britney. So that's one of the reasons that I love him. Like, is because he comes with
Same initials.
good observation. But
And I think that's the thing, Shelly, is that he is conservative. He may vote Republican, but if you listen to him talk, more often than not, he doesn't talk about Republican. It's always from conservative stance. And to me, that is better for him in the way he gets his message out, because he then in turn can take a shot at both parties because he's coming from his true what he believes, instead of sitting there going, well, the Republicans, the right is going with this, so I'm going to go with them because that's my. No, he's like, nope, I got conservative values, and he's called Trump out before, and I've agreed with him. Like, I listen to him almost every morning, and I think there's that, what is it, a misperception that all Trump believers are like crazy conspiracy theorists and we're all white. Well, I don't believe in QAnon and some of the other crazy stuff, and I'm not white, a couple shades darker. So, but no, you're right. He does come at it from both sides.
Okay, so SB, I believe.
Oh, nothing. Never mind. Go ahead.
SB 45. I believe it's 45 or it's 145. Either way, SB 45. So someone was asking about it. People keep asking about California, saying that didn't they pass that law to lower the age of consent? And no, they didn't lower the age of consent. It is still against the law to have sex with a minor. What that law did was actually for homosexual relationships, LGBTQ, whatever, relationships, because there's actually already a bill for hetero relationships that started in their teens, period, which starts, I don't know, about like 15 or 16, and then within 10 years. And so there was already one for female-male relationships that started when they were in about 15, 16 or whatever, for that specifically, because once they turn adults or whatever, and if the parents didn't agree with the relationship, but those two were consenting, and that's what they wanted, then it's up to a judge to decipher all of the information and either rule for the relationship or against it or whatever, because parents would want to prosecute for rape and all that stuff, taking advantage, sexual abuse or whatever, when the two were actually consenting. And so they wanted to extend this to LGBTQ relationships. So no, they do not. Sex with a minor is still against the law. That will, I don't see that passing, but I know that it is a very slippery slope because they extended it to the LGBTQ. I know that a lot of people are concerned about where that line is going to get pushed at the further and further, especially with that whole pedophilia thing being a sexual orientation. or preference. And so, and the it's like a 10-year gap or whatever, for the consenting people in the relationship, but not under, I believe, 15 or 16. When the relationship starts, though, so sex with a minor is still against the law. So anything under 18, if they haven't already had, two consenting people haven't already had a relationship, then if it's an abuse thing and they're trying, you know, and the abuser is trying to be like, oh, but pedophilia, whatever, like, no, it's still against the law. You're still a pedo, and you still got to go to jail, and you still got to get on the list. So that was part of the thing, to whether a judge would allow them not to be on the list because it was a consenting relationship. There's a Pinky 168 says, but the kid can be 14 and the offender can be up to 10 years older. But you're saying offender, and so that means abuse. We're talking about consenting relationship. If that
Well, and they both had to be under 18 to start. So we're not talking like a 17-year-old and a 7-year-old. Well, that might, we'd be naive to say that never happens, but it's disgusting. And I think they're more referencing like, 14-year-old with a 16-year-old. They're only 2 years apart in high school. And then now all of a sudden they're 17 and 21, or 17 and 19. I can't do math, obviously, but and now it's illegal for prior standards. But
correct.
So they're both under the age of 18
when they start.
So the gap, though, is like 10 years, and what they're talking about, though, is a 17-year-old and a 27-year-old, not a 14-year-old and a 24-year-old.
But
that's more for like 16, 17, because they're going to say, see, so a 14-year-old can't consent to a 24-year-old. And that's what I'm saying. No, they're not talking specifically about that, because if you look at the bill itself, they're referencing a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old.
But why would they use 10 years, though? That is a good point. Because
I don't know either. And that,
5 years. Yeah, right, I can say 5, but
that's part of that slippery slope. That's part of that. Yeah, but what about whatever? And like that's part of that slippery slope. Yeah.
So I think the bill, like, because I've read it. It started back in like February of 2019.
Correct.
So, if I remember correctly, they give you that 10-year gap. They use the 17-year-old as an example, and I think that's for a shit show, to be honest. Because when you read into it, it does sound like, where does that stop and start?
Correct.
To be honest with you, maybe this is something we could bring up on another one, because maybe dig into it, because I'm almost positive, because we looked into it, not to throw you out there, but I'm pretty sure they gave the example of 17, but 14 was the age that they were talking about. And that does allow you, if it's consenting, up to 24 years old. And like, I know we've talked about this before, the reality is, and we'll take this back to home, some parents aren't paying attention to what their kids are doing or who they're hanging out with. And let's just be honest, there's some 14-year-olds right now walking around looking like they're 24. It's whatever they're feeding these kids or whatever.
I understand that, but for me, like, my daughter's only a year older than that. And she's 15 right now, and she has a grown woman body. Literally.
Right. Well, that's what he was getting at, that sometimes these people don't know how young they are.
If some 25-year-old, 24-year-old, any adult try to hit on my kid, I'm having a problem. I don't care what the law says, period.
Yeah. But that goes back to the consenting part.
But that's what I'm saying. My kid cannot consent. My kid is a child. My kid can't even fucking wash her clothes on time.
Well, and I agree with you. I think when you start talking to some, a young kid, the maturity level, but this is a way to get, they slid this into this bill to say, okay, hey, if you're 14, you can up to 24. I disagree with it, but it was something
also, just so you guys know, like, I'm not defending the bill. I'm just explaining the bill, because we had to dive into it and really understand it in order to be able to talk about it. Whether anyone agrees with it or not, this is what it says. But we've had this conversation where, again, sometimes, like, Chelly, your kid probably most likely won't have a situation like that because you have that relationship, like you're there. But there are also a lot of other kids who don't have parents like us, who are like in their business, you know what I mean? And these kids, these children, you know, boy or girl or whatever, if they have the body for it or whatever, there's some that will convince an older person that they are of age or that they are whatever, even if they're younger, and they'll go with it. Does it make it right? No, it's not, but it happens. And if a relationship starts and the two are consenting and the parent eventually finds out, this bill was put in place to help the relationship, whether the parent likes it or not. And
But
it's up to the judge. It's up to the judge to decide to make to hear the case and either give it to the consenting relationship or not. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying any of that. This is just what it
what I'm
says.
saying is when we start talking about slippery slopes, right? Like, so we're saying, well, they made this because if that person doesn't have a parent like like we are parents, then no one's going to challenge that anyway, because the parent didn't give a shit in the beginning. So
Correct.
why are you still making the law? It makes no sense to me.
But
so here, oh, go ahead, Brittany, and then I'll
Because
jump
some
in.
do find out. So say you would find out and you went after him. It's for that.
I'm just gonna disclose something. Only because my brother don't have Facebook. But when he was 23, he dated a girl, right?
Mhm.
Just this girl. They lived together. I'm 7 years younger than my brother, so I was like 16 at the time, and they dated about 3 years, 2 years. The end of the story, basically, she was 16 and a runaway.
Right.
My brother never ID'd her. You don't ID people, you know. Maybe she avoided the let's go to the bar conversation, or maybe she even had a fake ID. I mean, that's been a thing since the dawn of time.
Right.
But her parents got pissed and tried to prosecute my brother, which my brother is not that kind of person. Absolutely not that kind of person. And he had a hard lesson learned. Like, I'm sure he's been with his wife now for like 20 years, but it was one of those things like, wow. And luckily my brother could afford a lawyer. So he lawyered up and his charges were dropped. But I could not imagine if he was not able to afford a decent lawyer, and it would have. And I'm not saying that those are every situations, like every situation is like that, but I can see the concern. However, I guess that was a scenario of a 10-year window also, because it was 7, a 7-year
Correct.
window.
Correct.
And that's what I was going to get to, is that, so I see some of the things coming up, like this laws for pedophiles. I'm going to take the stance from, it's like a 50-50, right? So yes, maybe for some, it might give them the opportunity. But then, and this isn't just for men, this is women too. Because there are dudes out there that look a little bit older, or there are women out there that go after younger men, whatever the case may be. Yes, it might. But some may use it to protect themselves because they are pedophiles or they like going after younger kids. Now, being let's say I'm in a relationship or like Brittany's brother's example, right? I know when I was like 20, 21, I would run into girls. I meet a girl, and there was a couple times where I met girls. I'm like, oh, she seems cool, and then you get to talk, and you're like, yeah, she seems young, and I've known dudes that have been in my same situation, like, but I'll ask age, because if she comes off way too immature, like, nah, I can't even talk to you. But I know dudes that are just like, because they're at the same maturity level. They may be 23, 24, but their maturity level still is a teenager. So they get duped into it. But let's go to the I won't say worst case scenario, but let's go to somebody who's really sly. If she had the fake ID, let's say it's her sisters or cousins, and there are people out there that look spot on their family members. And I know people who do this. They pass off the ID. This girl has a grown woman body and passes, and this dude's walking around with this girl thinking she's person A, but she's really B, and down the wet road, he gets hit. This saves some people that hard road of going to prison, because there are people out there, and I'm specifically, and I agree with you, Brittany, with that 5 years. 5 years to me is a little bit more understandable, because you get into that 16, 17, 18 range, and somebody's 20, 21. Things can happen, and it's not intentional. But there are dudes that are out there that push that borderline, maybe not knowing, and then wind up being put down as a pedophile or go to prison for this stuff, and
Which
it
is
ruins
life.
yes, and
Right.
it ruins the rest of their life, and that was never their intentions. Or they dated
have
this
to
girl prior
go
to
on the
that.
list.
So,
Yeah,
I know
no,
we kind of got off topic from the trans.
Yeah, we're gonna
trans thing,
bring it back.
but
This is definitely for another conversation,
but
because we could
this
go
goes
really
to that
deep into it.
pushing the boundaries
Mhm.
again, pushing the boundaries.
I want to say one more thing, because I don't know if I'll make that
Okay.
show, because you know my life. But maybe like I guess a happy medium for me would be like if they said 14, 5 years, and then if they said 16, you could up it to 10 or something. And then also I was gonna hold on, dude. Sorry, of course. No, okay, go. Bye. Eat whatever you want.
He's like, yes.
Dang it, total brain fart. Jesus, kids. No, what you said something.
5 and 10.
I know you said something though at the end of your thing that like prompted something.
I was talking about
that they could change them and like their whole lives.
yeah, the whole life.
Gosh.
Like you get some, like it'll mess up the whole life, especially if they're close in age.
I remembered. Okay, so
Yeah.
a lot of all the people, it has nothing to do with that, but anyways, it helped me remember. A lot of people, thank you. A lot of people in the comments are saying like pedophiles. I share the concern. I really, really do. But I'm sure this isn't going to go to court, and they're going to take the guy's word. And I'm totally stereotyping that the guy's older and the girl's younger, just based on mental maturity levels. But they're not going to go to court, and the guy's going to be like, well, I had a relationship with her, and she's going to be like, no, you didn't. And then they're like, oh, well, we got to believe him. It's going to be backed with photos and conversations and text messages and Facebook profiles. It's not just going to be like, who do we believe? You know, it's going to be back. You can tell if somebody had a relationship. There's going to be family and friend witnesses. Did you know this person? Did they ever seem weird? And yes, there's going to be those scenarios where it's an abusive relationship as well. But I think we're stretching a little, you know, and you can't protect everybody. But I do agree that there is more individuals who have had their lives ruined over the lying side of a minor or whatever versus, you know, and a lot of it is consent, because I, especially growing up in the Bay Area, those girls like think they hot shit and they're like, oh, my man's 22, and I'm like, girl, you are 15. Like, yeah, it's cool, he's gonna buy me beer. You know what I mean? Like, okay.
And again, to be clear, SB 45 was specifically for LGBTQ community. This was already for a female and a male relationship. This was already a bill. This was already in law years and years and years and years before SB 45 came out, and no one said shit. No one had a problem with it until this came out, and this was specifically for LGBTQ. So I understand the outrage. I understand that, because we had our own, but in order to really understand what this was, and I was like, oh shit, they already had this for female male. Like, where's everybody upset about this then? Because it's the same Assembly Bill AB. What am I looking at? Is it the one I'm talking about?
You kept saying SB.
It is
Whatever,
SB.
don't matter.
I know, because I was looking into it for a year. SB 45. Because it came from Wiener out in Sacramento. And apparently, supposedly, okay, you can check my facts, but supposedly, he is, well, one, he's LGBTQ also, and two, someone said that he's a registered sex offender. Someone could fact check that. And I was like, what? Are you serious? See, SB 45 right there.
No, this is
what?
Not.
Okay, then it's 145. I disclaimed that in the very beginning. I said it's either 145 or 45, but it's one of those, and this is what it is. So
I think it was Wiener and a female. It was two people who put that one on.
Oh, it was Senate Bill 145. I was like, that doesn't sound right.
That's what I said.
Yeah. That's the one.
SB
Now,
145.
just so we don't get in trouble.
Okay, look, and it says,
Senate Bill 145.
Let's circle back to trans.
yeah, circle back, circle back. Sorry, I didn't.
We'll have to do another show on that, but
Yes, yes.
So yeah, so after kind of seeing these, I'm just, the only other thing I wanted to share is when we get into.
Just hold on, real quick, Pinky. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not saying like whatever. Like I know you're super passionate, and I can tell it in the things that you're writing or whatever. I'm not agreeing with the bill. I'm just explaining what it is, and does it make it right? No, it's not right. Do we agree with it? No, not really. Do we understand that it's pushing lines and boundaries? And are there going to be sneaky people who get in there? Yes, I'm sure there are, but sneaky fucking people get in right now. Anyways, just be aware. Just be parents. Be aware. Be present. You know what I'm saying? Like be involved with your kids' stuff or whatever. I'm like, ugh. Yeah. All right, cool, girl. We're on the same page. I love you.
So yeah, so when we're talking about like all this stuff, now I want to make sure that it's clear that I have absolutely nothing against transgender people whatsoever. I do believe in one God. I have a really good faith, but again, I feel that it's not my job to judge either.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I have a problem when it comes to children. An adult, do whatever you want with your body. You're grown. Mm-hmm. It is not my, hey, I will treat you just like a person, like anybody else, because you are that. You are a person. That is your right. That is your body. That is your choice. I just want to make sure that we are clear that I do not agree when it comes to children. Children. And tonight we've heard ages 3. We've heard ages 6. So I just want to make it very clear. When you start hearing ages 3 and 6, I could tell you right now at 3, I was just teaching people are lucky if your kids are fully potty trained by 3. Like, that's kind of my point. So when we kind of get into this, there's like, oh, Silicon Valley, they like jump on the wagon. They're all for it. I'm going to pull this up really quick because I want to share this. It's not a video. It's just a little statement. I'll kind of go over the gist of it really quick to get us through this. Here we go. All right, let's go back to StreamYard. Okay, so here we have Miss Demi Lovato. So Demi Lovato decided that she felt like it was her place, or she needed to come out. Maybe she needed to be relevant again, so she had to jump on the bandwagon. That's what I'm taking from it. So this is just my own opinion. I'm throwing it in there. I think she was irrelevant for a long time, so she decided to come out, and she's saying that she's against gender reveal parties. You know, like it's a new thing. Like I had, my last baby was 15 years ago, so we didn't have that. That wasn't a trendy thing back then. I know it is a trendy thing now. So she says, this is not about being politically correct. It's about being correct. The refusal to acknowledge this stems from a misunderstanding of what transphobia is. Transphobia is not just prejudice or violence against an individual trans person. It is a belief system that presumes non-trans people to be more natural than trans people. Only individual people can self-determine their gender. I think there was something else. What else did she say? She also goes on and says, when I hear about discrimination and setbacks, that truly breaks my heart. I struggle with wrapping my head around the fact that we live in a world where love and equal rights still have to be questioned or discounted. You all have been a huge part of my life and my existence. You still empower me, blah, blah, blah. Okay, where's the other part that she said?
I just can't see.
And I think love is love. You can find it in any gender. I like the freedom of being able to flirt with whomever I want. There was another part that she said that I want in this article. Where the hell is it? Oh, where is it? Where is it? Did I pass it? Where the hell is it? La 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 la. Where is that part? She like specifically talks about
They're so worried. They're so worried about what we're revealing about our babies, but they don't care about the babies in the womb. Like this makes no sense. And I'm pro-choice, but it's like, why are they worried about gender reveal and saying that that baby has a right to determine their gender, but they don't care if you get aborted at 9 months? Like this makes zero sense to me. Like if you're not worried to the baby when the baby gets out, then worry about the baby when it gets out. Don't worry about it in the womb. And so what the parent does while the baby's in the womb, you don't worry about it because you don't worry about it. It ain't your business, right? So don't worry about it. Why is this even a topic? This is stupid.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I really believe that I think she was like irrelevant for a while, so maybe she needed
Oh
to
yeah, she drug overdose and now she's trying to make headlines again. That's cool.
She's had multiple.
Be bold, Miss Debbie. Be bold.
Right. Oh, this is what she says. This is the one that I wanted. Sorry. She said
Agreed,
this.
Susan.
You see it?
No, I just said agreed, Susan. Sorry. Try to sneak it in there.
This definition erases the fact that there are boys with vaginas and girls with penises, and that there are people who are neither boys nor girls. The idea that sex is based on genitalia is inconsistent with science.
She said this?
Yes.
So hold up, because she said that there are boys with vaginas and girls with penises.
Yep.
So do we call them biologically correct parties? I mean, I'm not sure. That's so hypocritical. Like, if you're not going to worry about the baby in the womb, don't worry about the baby in the womb. This shouldn't even be a topic. Yes, don't use dynamite or alligators or like bombs, because that's stupid and that's how people's parents are dying before they're even born. But like to put hate because you're worried about the stigma you might create for this probably perfectly heteronormal baby, it's
ridiculous.
I agree.
I've been very open about my personal life. I'm an open book, really. So I think everybody here knows, like, my dad's been or was a drug addict since he was 19 years old. So I'm not attacking people who have issues. I believe those people deal with demons, but I liked her better when she was on drugs.
And just a reminder that confusion for those who believe or whatever, confusion is not from God, because God is not a God of confusion. Confusion comes from an evil and dark place. So just keep that in mind. So, and that's to go off of what Brittany was talking about. If a baby is not a baby and we're okay to abort it, but now you're saying to pay attention to the baby because they have rights.
Which one is it?
That's confusion.
Yep.
Your logic has to cover every aspect. It has to go across the board. It's not just one. So in this instance is this, and then in this instance is this, but for this circumstance it's this. Like, that's confusion. And just remember, confusion, a house divided against itself falls, and it's from a dark and evil place. Don't get caught there.
And I never thought about it like that. I think I got something new today out of this. It is confusing, like mass confusion. And the more you confuse people, that's what's keeping us on different pages, because we're allowing the confusion to happen instead of coming to the table where, the four of us, we all have disagreements in some areas, but we can come to the table and be like, hey, look, find that middle ground and try to be less confusing. And that's what more people need to do. Because it is. I mean, I didn't think about it until you guys said it right now. Like, yeah, you can abort a baby, no problem. But then if you keep the baby, I'll be damned if you try to say what this gender is. Don't you put nothing on that child.
It's
All of a sudden, we want to stand up for its rights.
Because it has right.
But I thought a baby in the womb wasn't a baby in the womb, especially if it's a fetus.
It's only if you decide to keep it, and
It's not alive though. So
well, that's the thing. The hypocrisy is real. Like you say one thing in one breath, and then you say something else in another breath. So
And
people, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I'll save it. I don't know if we're gonna wrap up, but I'll just save it for final thoughts.
So yeah, we'll get to final thoughts. So we'll start with who wants to go first.
For final thoughts.
Yep.
I'll go first. So I just this whole pushing the boundaries and limits thing, like that's how we got here, because we've let it happen on so many things. And I think, Brittany, you brought up a good point earlier. You were talking about like you had to get consent to get a piercing and a tattoo. And I think it's crazy how like some areas you have to get consent, but this is something where like if the parent, they could force it onto their kids in a sense. But then yet, if I were to take my son to the liquor store to go buy him some alcohol and then come back to the house and get drunk with them, like I would be shamed for that. And if I let him get in the car and drive, and then you go to jail for that. But then I can't give him drugs, but we could, if he wanted to change his sex, I could give him hormone replacements.
Yeah, you can give him drugs.
Like you give him drugs.
Medical drugs.
There is a definite confusion that is off my checkbox. Dr. whatever Levine, Rachel Levine said that the medical doctors they understand what's going on and that it's well expected. And I've been hearing that a lot. Like doctors, well, it's expected. They know. Well, they're okay with it. No, I don't think they're okay with it. Just because it's expected doesn't mean they're okay with it. And it's expected because, well, I don't know. Maybe somebody started writing laws saying that you will accept this. You are going to practice like this, or you will not practice at all. And when you start telling people that, you're forcing people to conform. And I think that's like when Biden signed this executive order, he took that right away from us. He took our choice. You're either saying conform or break the law. And they're doing it on many levels. I have two more and I'm done. I just want to point out some hypocrisy when it comes to, because we're talking trans rights and whatnot, when it comes to the religious point of view, or the religious sense, something that I notice, especially in the Christian community, is a lot of Christians, especially hardcore Christians, they'll come off as Republican or conservative. But it's funny how like I see more of them accepting of the Democratic leftist ideology, but then on the other hand, like nobody talks about Muslims. And if you really if somebody's really hardcore Muslim, like there's a lot of things you can and can't do, and there's a punishment for things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And what I find I won't say crass, but ironic is that they tend to come here and fall on the Democrat side, but yet they probably have stronger conservative right-wing views than your Christians.
Well, that's also what Paul Rand was saying. He was like, it's like unanimous globally, basically, that everyone else but the United States agrees that pushing this on children is wrong.
I feel like to wrap, I'm going to end it with
crime
this.
Against humanity.
I feel like when we start doing stuff like this, and we start changing people's physical appearances and altering them, in a sense, to me, I feel like we're starting to play God. When we start making these type of
choices and
changes to the person, to me that's like playing God, and that's just something I don't think we should do. I think we're playing with fire, and I think we're doing it a lot. I think we're playing the God with a lot of things, whether it be abortion or changing your child's sex. It's wrong, and I think that is why we're in this situation. And hopefully this doesn't get us banned, but as you guys were talking, I chuckled to myself and thought, if I can kick you in you're a dude. Just want to throw that out there. Hey, I gotta go because I have a few things to do, so I'm cutting out early. Thank you guys. I'll see you guys later. Thanks everybody in the comments. Again, another awesome show, and go Canelo, because I got to go set up for this fight.
Yes.
All right. Hey, appreciate it, guys. Brittany, I'll see you next month.
Possibly.
Okay. All right.
And to add to his little towards the end of his, Tom McDonald also says in one of his songs, what does he say? He wants to be a girl, but so if he takes, anyways, don't. I'm gonna stop right there because I don't know the words exactly. So before I put my foot in my mouth, I'm just gonna be quiet. I'll come back. I'll circle around back to that next time, or put it in the comments. But final words for me, really, at the end of the day, parents, be present, pay attention, get all up in the business. If you're a believer, pray, make sure that you have focus and clarity and vision going forward. Don't forget that confusion and division are not from God. They are from a dark place. They are evil. They tend to make you go in swirls round and round and round in circles. And the whole point of life is to learn, to gain wisdom, and to share with other people, to uplift and encourage in love and light. Love your neighbor as yourself. Also to protect your children, to protect the children. So stand firm in that. And if you're not sure about it, ask God for some boldness and some clarity and wisdom to understand what that is and discernment, right? The serenity prayer, that's a really good one. Just remember love and light, period.
I just want to pump down our blood pressures really for a minute. I know I'm glad we're talking about this. I'm glad we have emotions behind it, but I'm very much we'll see. I like to call their bluff in a lot of these extreme situations because we know that the media likes to light fires in the public eye. And so the fact that even the doctor wouldn't commit to an answer tells me how on board-ish, I mean, obviously she passionately believes about it, but the fact that she wouldn't address that in fear of not getting voted in, I think that kind of shows she knows it's not a majority opinion. If they were to executive order this, I would 100% be a little more concerned. But if they do, or on the flip, if they took it and it actually got passed, yes, I would be concerned. Taking parents' rights away, I think would be omitted if it did even get passed with parent approval. And if that is the case, there's going to be a lot of people who will leave the country. I think it's been such a, well, if you don't like it, leave. If you don't like it, leave. It's been such a back and forth since like Obama era and maybe even Bush era that people aren't afraid to anymore. We're not afraid because when the U.S. gets to be viewed worse as another country, people will leave. And the ones that don't. And so I'm saying this to basically just say, just wait, like learn about it, educate yourself, get your feelings, know where you stand, but don't get so upset and like, that you feel it, that the world's over. And oh my gosh, like I remember back with, the election stuff, people would, like the girl who called Cash crying, like just could not succumb to how we got here. And so we're not there. They're trying to, and there's always something in history that's like, oh, that was risky for that time. But for it to actually pass, I'd be very, very surprised. Especially, like I said, without parent consent. I would be very curious to see that. So, yeah, my final words is just that. Just keep your eyes open. Take it for what it is. Educate yourself, but don't freak out. We'll get through this one way or another.
My final thoughts are basically, I agree with everything everyone has said tonight. I think that we didn't really address it, and maybe we'll do a part 2 someday. But I think that people should start really looking into gender dysphoria, looking at what that means. Look into body dysmorphia. Like look into those things. Start really reading. Start educating yourself on it. And my main thing for me is when we are living in the world where this is my thing. I I do not care what other adults choose. That is their right. They have that freedom. For me, I care when you start imposing that on me. Like, we don't have to believe the same things. We don't have to all be the same. We are all unique. So to me, my main thing is once you cross boundaries and they keep, you keep bringing that bar lower and lower and lower. So for me, like Brittany said, like, pay attention to what's going on. Know who your representatives are. Know what kind of laws they're trying to pass in your state. Like, start paying attention for yourself, for your children, for your families. And again, we need to start talking about mental illness. We definitely need to talk about it and how it fits into certain things. We should definitely look into gender dysphoria, body dysmorphia. I think those are the only two I really wanted to talk about. But so yeah, maybe we'll do a part 2 on like mental illness and how it relates to this.
Well, a lot of well, I don't even want to say children, but part of it was that, so that UK psychiatrist or whatever was talking about how the sex change doesn't change all the underlying effects that were already there.
Correct.
And so a lot, I mean, if we've all been through some shit in our life, we know that there's a reason that we have the life that we had, and that there were underlying issues that needed to be dealt with. And I feel like this is just like, you just brought this to my mind or whatever. I feel like this is just one of those, let's sweep it under the rug things. Let's just not really address any of the issues that are really going on, and let's put a Band-Aid on it and deal with the shit later.
It's hiding the big ugly D word, depression. They want to say, oh, well, they're upset or not happy because they think they're a boy. No, how about they're just depressed? Like, and totally healthy families can produce depressed members, period. It doesn't, I know a lot of us can relate to trauma, but even to happy mom and dads, if it's just something in the serotonin levels, it can submit to depression. And it's mental health is, again, reason number 2,642 why we should focus on mental health and not just in the gender aspect. It should be all around 100%.
And Paul Rand made a great point that we don't talk about either, is that they grow out of that phase. Like, there's a phase where they're figuring out who I am, what do I like, what am I about, whatever. And then they grow out of it into their teen years, when they start hitting puberty and their hormones change.
Teen angst is a thing.
Yes, and they start to grow out of it. And even if it started in their teenage years, like, some stuff was probably going on, but they figure it out once they get into their adulthood. Like, they figure it out as they go. So putting like this urgency to figure it out now when they're little, like, it makes no sense whatsoever, biologically or psychologically, period. Also, hermaphrodites, real quick, so I've seen it. Most hermaphrodites that I've read about or heard about or whatever, they might have both parts, but they are one. Like, they're either male or female with both parts. I haven't heard of a lot of stories of.
It's normally not both parts are functioning either. So it's
correct.
It's just an anatomical type thing.
Correct.
But yeah, we'll definitely have to kind of do probably part 2 when we talk into like mental illness and all these things, because it is a lot of information. And I know Brittany, it has a really tight schedule, and I'm just grateful that she was finally here with us. I love her points of view. So anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Please, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like and share this video. We would greatly appreciate that also. Anyways, go ahead.
Sorry, one more thing, because I know sometimes if you're new to the show or whatever, and then you go and kind of search us up or whatever, if you do, can you please, when you do search, just click on my name and then go to my actual profile and click follow. I would very much appreciate it, so that your friend request doesn't sit there.
What she said. And if you guys share these videos, please, when you're sharing our videos, please make sure that they're public. So for that particular video, just make sure that it's public so that other people can see it. We want people to get these messages to get out so that other people are aware of what's happening, because a lot of times the issues that we're talking about, you're not hearing on the regular news. So we appreciate you guys. Have a great night.